Liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov had a heated exchange with her MAGA co-host, Jesse Waters, who insisted the Vice President Kamala Harris had a terrible week, that she is losing the 2024 election, and that Donald Trump is dominating. Only for Waters to be contradicted less than an hour later by none other than a Fox News poll, and the whole thing is glorious, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. As you know, Jessica Tarlov does a really, really good job of crushing her MAGA co-hosts on her own. But in this case, she actually had help from none other than a Fox News poll. And I should say, for all of Fox's problems, they are a reputable pollster. They're one of the best in the business. And so Jesse Waters here was not only flattened in the episode by Jessica Tarlov, but also by his own network's poll. But we're going to play the clip in which he sets himself up for abject failure first. Then we'll get into the poll, and then we'll play some other clips from this episode of The Five.
You said she has problems in 2019. She has problems for the last 4 years, and she has problems now because this last week she got cooked. This was a huge vacuum where she took the week off to prepare for a CNN interview or a debate or whatever the hell she was doing for the last week. And the media got annihilated by Republicans because the media is trying to defend her record. And even they can't defend her record because they don't know what her record is. Kamala doesn't know what her record is. The Kamala campaign doesn't know what her record is. They won't send Walz out to do interviews because he doesn't know what her positions are. So this was a terrible week. She got no bounce out of the convention.
That's not true.
She's no bounce.
She got a 4-point bounce, and
no
she's
bounce.
in Georgia today campaigning.
Okay, she got no bounce, Jessica.
No bounce.
Look at the polls.
Okay.
And she's now down in all the battleground states.
That's not true.
Real clear. Check it out.
Okay.
Right now, in the break, I'll prove you wrong.
Okay.
And she's down in the betting markings. You can check that in the break, too.
So that was a lot. According to, Jesse Waters, I'm not sure he shouldn't be nervous at all. None of them should be nervous because Donald Trump is dominating so utterly. Except obviously it's not true. $540 million raised by the Harris-Walz campaign since she became the presumptive Democratic nominee, blowing Trump out of the water. Hundreds of thousands of volunteers blowing Trump again out of the water, raising the Biden campaign's already vastly superior ground game. She's dominating in the polls, both in the head-to-head and in the battleground. And just the overall energy is superior too. But if you have any doubts about it, I mean, obviously Jesse Waters is going to listen to me, right? I'm just a liberal, right? I'm one of those like libtards that he hates so much. Well, he might want to check out Fox News. This is a poll that they recently released. I mean, within an hour of Jesse Waters saying what he said.
Former President Trump will campaign in Potterville, Michigan tomorrow as he and his running mate J.D. Vance continue their campaign through the Rust Belt states. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris and Tim Walz focusing on the Sun Belt. Harris has made more trips to the Sun Belt states than former President Trump, and those visits have been paying off. According to the polls, as we mentioned earlier, she is ahead of the former president in 3 of our 4 new battleground state polls. She begins a bus trip through Georgia.
So, 3 of the 4 battleground states polled, with the exception of a 1-point disadvantage in North Carolina, the vice president is dominating. Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. That kind of undermines what Jesse Waters was talking about. So Fox News released, an expose on this. While support for Donald Trump has held steady, Kamala Harris has improved on Joe Biden's 2024 election numbers in 4 battleground states, driven by strong support among women, black voters, and young voters. In addition, while Trump leads on top issues, more voters see Harris as the one who can unite the country and who will fight for people like you. Okay, and so to go into this a bit. Let's see, one of the pollsters says that these results show that Harris has succeeded in expanding their electoral map. When Biden was at the top of the ticket, the only pathway to an electoral college victory for the Democratic ticket was a sweep of the blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, says Democratic pollster Chris Anderson. That's no longer the case with the Sun Belt states in play. Anderson and Republican Darren Shaw make up the bipartisan team that conducts Fox News surveys, okay? So, going into some of this as well. By a 7-point margin, more voters see Harris as the candidate who will unite the country. Most Democrats feel that way, as do over half of independents and a handful of Republicans. Voters are more divided over who will fight for people like you, as 50% say Harris and 47% say Trump. And despite Harris being the incumbent vice president, voters put her on par with Trump for bringing needed change. 49 Harris, 48 Trump. So Trump is leading. Harris's campaign has accomplished something that seemed impossible 3 weeks ago. She is seen as the change candidate despite being the incumbent vice president at a time when there's considerable anxiety about the state of the country and the administration's ratings are dismal, says Shaw. For the moment, they have remade what was a re-election campaign for Biden into a referendum on Trump. On the other hand, as it points out, Trump does lead on 2 of the top 3 issues, economy and immigration, while Harris leads pretty widely on abortion. She leads more on abortion than Trump leads on the economy and immigration. So it's still going to be a very close election. There's no doubt about it. I just think it's hilarious that Jesse Waters, just was so defiant. This was a terrible week for Harris. She sucked and she got no advantage whatsoever in the media, and the Republicans cooked her, and she's down in this and she's down in that. His own employer comes out with this top-rated poll that says, actually, no, in most situations, she's beating Trump, particularly in these swing states. Pretty funny stuff. Just goes to show how much of a loser Jesse Waters is. But we have some more clips of Jessica Tarlov laying down some brutal fact checks on her MAGA co-host. So let's play a couple more.
Whatever. When you are competing against Trump, who has a long record of doing... I'm for a national abortion ban. I'm not.
Talk about her.
Well, but I'm talking about the race that she's participating in. And she's running against someone who wants to ban TikTok, then doesn't want to. I'm for a national abortion ban. Now I'm not. I'm for visas for highly skilled migrants. Now I'm not.
So she's so good at bringing this up. What they're talking about is that, and a lot of right-wing media is doing this, they're trying to hit the vice president on being a flip-flopper, right? And perhaps that's true. There's no question that she has moved closer towards the center compared to when she was running in the Democratic primary 5 years ago in 2019. There's no question about that. And we can have a debate over whether or not that's good policy or it's good politics. It may be good politics. I'm not sure it's good policy because, of course, I prefer a more progressive agenda, but it's probably good politics. And anyways, it was 5 years ago. What Jessica Tarlov is pointing out, Donald Trump will change his position on something in 5 minutes, even today in 2024, and they don't care. Right-wingers don't care. Her Fox co-hosts don't care. Donald Trump, again, can say something on Monday, completely contradict himself on Tuesday. It's just Trump, or they'll never draw attention to it in the first place. It's just baked into the price of dealing with Trump. But if Vice President Harris does something in 2024 that's wildly or even slightly different to something that she said in 2019, well, they want to make it a national scandal. She's refusing to bite. Tarlov is saying, no, by that standard, Trump is objectively worse. And if anyone wants to call her out on changing her position, she can just appeal to the dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times that Trump has contradicted himself, probably within the past 6 weeks as well. So again, demonstrating Trump's objective inferiority on the thing that matters quite a bit to these Republicans, I think is a really good strategy. Another clip from this episode in which Jack Smith's superseding indictment comes up. We talked about that in a previous video, but Jessica Tarlov and the Five weigh in.
I do. Have thoughts on my paper, and now I'm going to have my thoughts out loud. So Trump says anything he doesn't like is election interference. That's his favorite thing to say, and I think this is largely baked in. People who think that he's a victim of the justice system and lawfare believe that, and people think that the American people have a right for him to have his day in court and to also see the evidence presented and to have people rule on that before an election where they have to give him the most important job in the world again, feel that way about it. My understanding from reading the coverage from back in March, so he was in a Florida courtroom, and Jack Smith's team were down there, and they explained that the 60-day rule or the 90-day rule doesn't apply when someone is already in the hands of the justice system, when they've already been charged. And Donald Trump has already been charged.
Yes, he was. Now, I want to talk about that because that claim's been circulating, this idea that that Jack Smith is engaged in election interference because he violated some sort of rule about not filing indictments 60 days prior to an election. But Forbes has a fact check about this. Trump claims Jack Smith couldn't file updated indictment before election. Here's why that's false. Former President Donald Trump claimed Tuesday that special counsel Jack Smith shouldn't be allowed to file an updated indictment against him in his federal election case so soon before the election, citing the Justice Department's, quote, 60-day rule, quote. But that rule doesn't apply here, particularly as Smith brought the indictment long before the election. Smith filed an updated superseding indictment against Trump on Tuesday, which tweaked the allegations in Trump's case for trying to overturn the 2020 election. Trump railed against the new indictment on Truth Social, claiming that the Justice Department violated its own policy and that the agency should not take any action that will influence an election within 60 days of that election. Now, of course, Trump and Republicans didn't care when FBI Director James Comey, part of the Department of Justice, announced mere days before the 2016 election that he'd reopened investigations into Secretary Hillary Clinton. That had an impact on the 2016 election. Of course, Republicans don't care, but of course, they're just hypocrites. and saying he's, quote, been informed by my attorneys that you're not even allowed to bring cases literally right before an election, a direct assault on democracy. So this is where the Forbes fact check comes in. The DOJ has long had an informal rule in place advising prosecutors not to take big steps in investigations, like bringing new indictments, within 60 days of an election if it could impact the results at all, which stems from a DOJ statute saying, quote, federal prosecutors and agents may never select the timing of any action, including investigative steps, criminal charges, or statements for the purpose of affecting any election. Okay, so they're forbidden from specifically doing things to influence an election. And the informal rule has stemmed up maybe just as a good practice. We advise you not to file new indictments or new investigations within 60 days of an election. Again, that part is informal. It's only advice. Legal experts argue that this only applies to new investigations, however, and does not apply when a case is already in court, as the case is then out of the DOJ's hands and up to the judiciary to decide. Prosecutors in Trump's other federal criminal case similarly said in March they don't believe the rule applies when the case has already been charged, like Trump's federal election case, as the charges against him have been pending since last year, despite the updated indictment now tweaking some of the allegations. But even if the rule did apply to Trump's case, it still wouldn't matter. The rule is voluntary, and there are no consequences if the DOJ violates it, and prosecutors brought the updated indictment 70 days before the election, so it isn't even within the 60-day window. So there you have it. Once again, Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are wrong. Shocker. One last clip I want to play of Jessica Tarlov because they're all so damn good.
Okay, so I'll go to you, Jessica. The Democrats are so upset to tether Kamala to Biden. Then why, if the vice president is so irrelevant, is she bringing Vance to her first interview? Bringing Waltz to her first interview.
I was like,
sorry
I really
that.
hope she's not sitting down with JD Vance tomorrow night.
Waltz. Yeah.
I don't think that that's fair for all the reasons that Dana ran over. And I understand that other people had done the primary and had their solo interviews. But this is an election like no other in that she became the candidate 39 days ago. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have liked to see it, but I don't think that it's going to be a major detracting moment or whatever the right term is for that. But I hate this, tethering thing. You're the vice president of the United States of America. There is a lot of positive stuff to run on. And then just make clear to people, it's like all of us have bosses, right? And we may not agree with everything that they think. So you say, we did a lot of good. This is how I would do this differently. This is why a Kamala Harris administration.
So there you go. So the argument was Politico wrote an admittedly very clumsy headline where they were like, JD Vance tries to tether Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. Obviously, for political reasons. The community note was, well, she is tethered to Joe Biden, literally, in terms of politics, because she's his vice president. The idea was that, the vice president is trying to strategically distance herself from the president on areas in which the president is unpopular, and that may affect the Harris administration. Jessica Tarlov is saying, well, okay, focus on the parts about your participation in the Biden-Harris administration that you're proud of, that you support, and try to, walk that delicate line of disagreeing with your boss, because it is important to remember President Biden is still the president of the United States, and he is still the vice president's boss. And so even then, she has to be very, very careful, not just for professional reasons, but in many ways, national security. So if President Biden even has a wildly unpopular stance on national security, take his Gaza policies, which are wildly unpopular, she can't outright openly defy him or contradict him because he's her boss, and that could also undermine national security and that entire situation. So it's not just politics. It's also serious governing concerns as well. So what Jessica is saying is listen, they are tethered together. She is going to strategically distance herself when and where appropriate. She's also going to try her level best, as well she should, not to undermine her boss, but she should emphasize the things about the Biden-Harris administration that she is proud of, and she does do that. So it's just Fox making a big deal about a stupid headline from Politico, which was roasted. I mean, that Politico headline was kind of cringe the way it was phrased, and it got slapped with a community note. But anyway, great performance by Jessica Tarlov. Per usual, she is the best at what she does, and she humiliated Jesse Waters, and I can't wait for her to remind Jesse Waters in the next appearance or the next episode they have together about that Fox News poll, which also undermined Jesse Waters' point and dropped an hour after he made his big, stupid claims. And in the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.